This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Good evening and welcome to WAAY 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviat. Tonight it is murder, mediation, and the law. We've got a fun combination for you tonight because we're going to talk about mediation. Alternative dispute resolution is a way to solve your case. It's a lot less stressful, may cost you a lot less money. We'll talk through how that works and see if it's something that you might be interested in for your case. Okay, that's the mediation part. Our mediator is here to talk about it, but he is also a best-selling author of legal thrillers, and they're a lot of fun. He's got a great new one out that's set in North Alabama, so you're going to want to know what it is and who he is. Calling your questions about mediation, the 31 Law Call number, 256-536-0077, or maybe you've got questions about how to become a best-selling author yourself. So, getting us started tonight, Will League is here from Timberlake and League. Good to have you here.
Sharon, good night. How are you?
I'm good. This is a fun, little different twist on Law Call tonight.
It is. Murder and the law. So we're talking about a high-profile case out of right here in North Alabama, Guntersville, Alabama. A prominent doctor was murdered, and a local attorney is forced with the task of defending his sister for a murder charge, and he does not practice criminal law. No, we practice civil law. And so going and switching over for a murder case, especially for a family member, you hear about, you don't want to do surgery on your family members. Representing them is likewise difficult. And in this case, in North Alabama, this attorney was forced to basically defend his sister in a murder charge. And that is a legal thriller by Bob Bailey, a local hero and author. Bob has been the lawyer here for over 20 years. And Bob, first off, thank you for coming up and talking about your book. Just a couple things before we get started. Now, it's set in your most recent book. You've got 8. It started with The Professor. You're on the Wall Street Journal bestsellers list. This is your latest, Rich Blood, out of Guntersville, Alabama. Yeah. Very nice. And if you read the book, you'll see a lot of places that you may be familiar with. There's also the Golfer's Carol, which is fiction, inspirational, surrounding many aspects of Bob's life. Bob, first off, how'd you make the switch? I know you're still a lawyer, but when did you decide to start writing novels?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on the show, guys. Really honored to be here. And for me, always loved fiction ever since I was a kid. And I took a creative writing class my last year of college at Davidson College. Really enjoyed it. Wrote 4 short stories, which were probably pretty terrible at the time, but thought I got enough good criticism that I thought there might be something there, and then started really thinking about writing a novel when I was in law school. The idea kind of came to me then.
Now, let's go back to your first book, Bob, The Professor, around 2012-13. Bear Bryant makes a cameo, and it's about an old professor at Alabama and has a big case. And how'd you come up with that story? And we love the fact that Bear Bryant made a cameo.
Yeah, so the idea that came to me in law school was what would happen if a law professor actually had to try a case. And so it was kind of a smart aleck idea at the time. But it stuck with me, and I thought, what would happen? And what if we made the law professor a legend? And the easiest way to make someone a legend in the state of Alabama is to put one of them on Coach Bryant's teams.
Right.
Love it.
So Tom McMurtry sort of spawned from that, and then the character has a lot of my father in him as well. And so in that story, Tom sort of returns to the courtroom with his young former student to take on this trucking magnate.
Very nice, very nice. That was the first one in 2012. Your most recent one, Rich Blood, set in Guntersville, Alabama, murder of a doctor and a criminal trial. Now, we both practice civil law, and looking at the book, and I hadn't read it yet.
I'm halfway through. Don't tell me how it ends.
That's right. That's right.
I'm loving it, and I'm loving all the North Alabama locations.
And so you've got a civil attorney who's had some personal problems, and all of a sudden is thrust into the criminal world. So what's the big difference of going from not only practicing civil law and then criminal law, but writing about it, as your background is in civil law?
So Jason Rich is he's a plaintiff's attorney, and he advertises with billboards, and I just thought it would be neat to put somebody like that in a completely out of wheelhouse situation that had sort of a family dynamic as well. And so the story really is Jason coming home to Guntersville and returning to Guntersville to represent his sister, who's been charged with this brutal murder for hire of her husband, a beloved local physician. And Jason has this tortured relationship with his sister and with just Guntersville in general, because he was sort of in his father's shadow as well. So coming home, there's a lot of family dynamics to it. And also, you know, criminal lawyers try a lot of cases, whereas civil law, you know, a lot of civil cases end in mediation. A lot of them end in informal settlement. And so you don't get in the courtroom as much. And I wanted to play with that some, because Jason, even as successful as he is, has never actually tried a case until this one.
And it's big stakes. Now, can you tell us, was she guilty of murder?
Don't tell me
Spoil
yet.
it for you.
Right?
I'd spoil it for Sharon.
Yeah, don't spoil it, because I'm having a good time. I have a close friend who is a Jana, who lives on Buck Island, where a lot of this is set. And if she doesn't know what she's getting for Christmas, she's getting an early Christmas present. It's a lot of fun, all these local locations. So mediation, I have cases that go to mediation. Family law cases, divorce cases, many times get sent to mediation. Some of your cases go to mediation?
We do. Basically, we'll file civil cases. And back before Bob and I started practicing, there was no such thing as mediation. And basically, you hear all the older lawyers talk. We'd show up in the courtroom Monday morning. We had a list of cases, list of witnesses, subpoenas, and the judge would take the cases in order, and you would try a lot more cases back then. You're looking at a lot of time, expense, fretting. Well, the lawyers are used to it, but when you're a party to a case and you sit through a jury trial and it's involving your stuff, your personal matters, it's a big deal. And it's a big deal to everybody, the judge, jury, everyone, but it's a lot of time, a lot of expense, a lot of nail biting. But mediation came along. And basically, it's where the sides can sit down and have a hand in the process. You have a mediator, such as Bob Bailey. He's one of the local mediators, does a great job. And the mediator will go back and forth between the two rooms. Because, as you know, Bob, if you put lawyers in the same room for long enough, they start fighting, nothing gets done. And so mediation is a process where they can go, sit down, and oftentimes bring some type of resolution. We say no one is entirely happy during a mediation, but you can get the case resolved without the risk of a trial, because a lot of times you don't know what 12 people are going to do. Bob, now you've got some credentials in mediation, and what kind of cases do you mediate?
So I mediate pretty much any kind of civil dispute, whether it be a car wreck, contract case, employment dispute, premise liability. That's my background as a lawyer, and so that's what I wanted to mediate. And I agree with everything you just said. Mediation is one of the few times in the path of a lawsuit where the parties have complete control over the outcome. And that's one of the things we talk about at the beginning of a mediation is, we take some of the, the uncertainty out of the process, because you can sit down, talk to a mediator who's just an objective, neutral. I don't make the final call. I'm not the judge. I'm just somebody who's trying to help both sides reach middle ground. And so I've always enjoyed the process as a lawyer, and I really do think cases that end in mediation are really helpful to everyone involved.
A whole lot less stressful. We got this email question in. Lynn had written in asking, does a mediation session have to be in person with all the parties involved, or can things be done remotely? I really can't stand to be in the same room with the person I'm in a dispute with. Okay, so maybe break that into two parts. Does everybody actually have to be physically present there for a mediation?
They have to be present in some form or fashion, but one of the great things about mediation is you can do it, really by agreement however you want to. I think most mediations, everybody will be in the same location, and but typically, other than perhaps an opening introduction session where everybody just sort of meets each other, people are normally in separate rooms, so the concern that the emailer there had wouldn't really be present. You'd be in your own room, and the mediator kind of goes back and forth and talks, to the lawyer for the plaintiff and the plaintiff, and then the lawyer for the defendant, and kind of goes back and forth with different offers. So even in an in-person mediation, there is some separation of the parties, so that you don't have that worry of being right next to somebody you're mad at. And then in the age of COVID, we have mediations by Zoom. We have mediations that take place sometimes even by phone, as long as you can get everybody together on the same day and you can reach each other.
And that's one of the big things is everyone can stop. The defense lawyer, the plaintiff's attorney, the mediator, the clients come in, and everyone's concentrated on one case, and they're trying to get some type of resolution. Oftentimes it's court ordered. The parties have to be there. And in civil cases like I do, oftentimes it's against an individual, but really it's, or a company, but really it's the insurance company behind that defendant that's making the calls. So if the insurance adjuster or representative is not there, oftentimes we can't get it done, and we have difficult, time getting everyone to concentrate on the case. And so we try and insist that the insurance representative will be there. And if they're seasoned, professional, oftentimes it can be done by Zoom, but there's no substitute for getting everyone there, concentrate on one case, and you can block everything out. As we all know, once you go back in the office, there's a million things coming at you, and you can always work on the Mahoney file or this or that. And so if you don't pay just singular attention to that particular case for that amount of time, they're difficult to get done. And Bob's job is to keep everybody there. And so I've been in mediation with Bob, and my client's mad, and we're out of here, and we'll see y'all later. And as we're walking out, it's Bob's job to say, listen, why don't you, take a breath. Here's their offer, talk it over. It may not be the last offer, but if you don't stay and find out, there's no way to resolve it. So he's oftentimes talking people off the ledge. Is that right, Bob?
It is right. What you said about everybody getting together on that one day dedicated to the mediation is so important. And then as the mediator, you have to be a good listener, and you really, I think, as a lawyer in the process, I've always found it helpful to have the mediator talk to my client because sometimes the client wants someone else to talk to them, and I think that goes for the other side as well. And so I think having somebody else to hear your story, and I think it's important. Sometimes either side, somebody just wants to tell their story to someone else, and so the mediator has to be a good listener to facilitate the process and to keep reminding the parties that they're there to try to reach the same goal, which is to resolve the case so they don't have to go to a trial.
You can also do some things with mediation that a trial judge wouldn't be able to do, right? Sometimes there are things, when we have divorce or custody mediations, there are things that these parties might be able to work out that the judge would not even have the authority to do. They're not even going to touch that. But if it's something that these folks want to work out, you can put it in writing. The mediator may be able to come to something that works for these particular people that wouldn't work for anybody else, and the judge would not even be able to do.
I'm sure in the domestic world, which you're in, you're a lot more crafty in terms of child custody, things like that, to have a resolution. With civil different mediations, it's different than arbitration. Let's talk about the difference.
Yeah.
Because arbitration, you hear about, if you go to a nursing home, you have to sign an arbitration clause. You buy a car, you have to sign an arbitration clause. A mediation, like Bob said, is where the sides come together and there's some type of agreement and they come to a mutual resolution. On arbitration, you don't go to a jury, you don't go to a trial court judge, but you'll go to an arbitrator, which is a similar type judge, and they make the call.
And it's final. It's final.
It's final. There can be appeal depending on the type of arbitration, but that mediator, or I'm sorry, arbitrator is making the determination on your case, and it's like it's a real bona fide trial, but outside. So the problem with consumers have is if Sharon, or Bob, I'm selling you a car, and I say, you know what, there's an arbitration clause, and if you don't like the car, we're going to go ask my brother to settle our dispute. I would think my brother would be on my side. And so what are the structures in place to make sure the arbitrator is relatively neutral?
Well, I'm not an arbitrator. I'm a mediator, and so I don't handle the arbitrations. Arbitrations are purely contractual, and so if there's an arbitration agreement in the contract between the parties, then the parties go to arbitration. And so I think the other side of that is that the company that has the arbitration agreement will say you sign the arbitration clause. And so that's what always happens in these cases where you're fighting about whether you should go to arbitration or not. I think in terms of the process, what Sharon said is right. I mean, the arbitrator is just like the judge, and so the arbitrator makes a final call, whereas in mediation, the mediator makes no decisions unless the parties have come to an agreement. And even then, the mediator will set out the agreement in writing and make sure everybody agrees, at least in principle, to the big aspects of the settlement. So vastly different, although both keep the parties out of the courthouse.
Okay, let's take a break. We'll be right back answering more of your questions about mediation and murder novels. Best-selling author here tonight to answer some of your questions on two different things. Stay with us.
You're watching WAAY 31 Law Call, where lawyers come to help. Your rights, your calls, live. Hosted by family law attorney Sharon Doviet. With the personal injury attorneys of one of the Valley's most respected law firms, Timberlake and League. Featuring the knowledge of managing partner Michael Timberlake, with millions of dollars awarded to his clients. And the experience of attorney Will League, a strong courtroom fighter known for his commitment to winning. And the fellow partners of Timberlake and League Heath Brooks and William Meservey. This is WAAY 31 Law Call.
Welcome back to 31 Law Call. I'm Sharon Doviet. Tonight we've got mediation, murder, and the law. We've got
Right.
a mediator here with us to talk about how mediation in the process works, but he is also a best-selling author. His newest book, fiction, out right now is Rich Blood, and it's set in North Alabama, and it's a lot of fun. So we're talking about that, as well as what mediation is like. We've also got with us, so we've got Will League from Timberlake and League, and our author is Robert Bailey, who's here answering questions tonight. We've also got callers waiting. Don is on the line with a question from Huntsville. Hi, Don. Thanks for waiting. What's your question tonight?
Yes, I am trying to get a divorce.
Okay.
I have a restraining order against my, husband for domestic violence from February. My attorneys had to hire 2 process servers in Nashville and finally got the papers, and he will not get back with her at all. So she suggested mediation. Well, I've already paid an arm and a leg to get this divorce. What if he doesn't show up for mediation? What is the next step?
Good question. You know, mediation can save you money, though, if you don't have to pay a lawyer to go to trial. Robert, talk to us a little bit about what happens if he just doesn't show up.
Well, you know, if the mediation's been court ordered, then and it's been scheduled and he just doesn't show up, I think that could probably be the subject of a motion by your attorney. I think it could also, simply be rescheduled. I think that the idea behind mediation is for, the parties to come there and try to settle, the case. And so I think, if he doesn't show, there could be a lot of reasons for that, but I would think that the main thing you'd want is your lawyer to take some type of action with the judge to maybe, especially if it's a court-ordered mediation, to enforce the order and make him show up for it.
That's right. If he violates court order, then it wouldn't bode for him well moving forward in the trial, and that's also going to be an issue. So you want to make sure that, especially if it's court order, you're there. But if he doesn't show up, you have to have 2 process servers. In order to serve your protection from abuse, it's got to be delivered properly in accordance with the law. And so it sounds like he's not compliant with that. And if he doesn't show up, just ask for the nearest court date, get your attorney to come and bring your side forward and get an order, and you'll be able to get your divorce that way.
You know, I've seen some judges before that when somebody's misbehaving, they're not following the rules, your lawyer might be able to ask the judge to strike his answer and declare a default in your favor. Now, I've seen some judges that say, no, I don't have the power to do that. I've seen others say, yes, I do, if they're not following the order. So there depends on which judge you've got, how far they might take it. But none of them are going to like what's going on with that. We've got Mimi on the line with a question from Madison County. Hi, Mimi. Thanks for calling. What's your question tonight?
Hello, everyone. How are you all doing?
Good. Glad to have you with us tonight.
Yes, ma'am. I was calling to ask, what steps can a person take if they've been imprisoned and charged with murder when they defended themselves on their own private property?
Oh.
Okay, so...
Yeah, and the evidence was cross-contaminated when court time came, and they wanted to find where's the, evidence like the clothing and things of that nature. It was not even in the area that it was supposed to be in. All
right, so I'm understanding your question. What can someone do if they're charged with murder?
Yes,
and what
on
are the
their
facts?
own private property, for defending themselves on their own private property.
All right, so Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, and Mimi, don't go away. I want to ask you about this, but you can defend yourself on your property or really anywhere else if you are in fear for your life. I mean, you can defend yourself at any time, but you can use deadly force if you feel that you're in reasonable threat of death or serious bodily harm. You know, stand your ground laws alive in Alabama. You don't have to retreat to the last wall like in some states. And in Alabama, basically, they're giving away guns like candy, but that's a whole other show. But you can, you know, if you're in fear for serious bodily harm or death, you can protect yourself or someone others by the use of deadly force. Now, to defend yourself, I don't think you should do it yourself. You know, only a fool has himself or herself for a lawyer. Sit down, talk with the lawyer. You mentioned there's cross-contamination, there's all types of things, but going it alone is not the way to go. Back in Bob's book, Rich Blood, why did she have to hire her brother, Bob?
Yeah, I've got questions.
What's the deal with that?
I don't know.
Why not get a criminal lawyer out of Gunnersville? And by the way, what did you have to do in Gunnersville to do research on the different places in your book?
So I think the reason she hires her brother is, number one, none of the criminal defense lawyers in town, she doesn't really like any of them. She doesn't think any of them will be good enough to handle her case. Now that's Jana. Jana Waters is the character in the story, and so she has, you know, some views that are, you know, central to her. But I think mainly she feels like she'll have a better chance with Jason. And in terms of setting the story in Gunnersville, you know, Lake Gunnersville is just a great setting for a story because you have the, you know, the romance of the town. It's a great, you know, quaint southern town, but then you have the lake being so beautiful, but also dangerous. So so Gunnersville's a great place to set a story. And I want to say one thing. You know, Jana's thoughts on criminal defense lawyers in Gunnersville are not mine. There are a lot of great lawyers.
There are
in
a lot of great lawyers around.
I just. In my story, it just worked better for her to ask her brother.
Well, you know, having a lawyer, just like the caller said, I think the caller was asking if Mimi should defend herself, and I really would recommend against it. There's so many things a defense lawyer can do for you. They have to prove the case. Yeah. Just because you were on your property doesn't mean it's not murder, and you still have to use reasonable force to protect yourself or others, and deadly force if only, you know, the elements of you're in reasonable fear of death or serious bodily injury.
We're going to take a break. Be right back answering more of your questions about murder, mediation, and the law. Stay with us. If you didn't get your questions answered tonight, here's how to get in touch with Robert Bailey with Lanier Ford in Huntsville, 256-535-1100. You can also check out lanierford.com and also check out robertbaileybooks.com. I already looked on that one. And personal injury attorney Will League with Timberlake & League. They do personal injury cases like car accidents, medical malpractice, 256-536-0770 or 800-804-2502. The website is law-injury.com. And if you like them on Facebook, you can learn more about the law that way.
And family law, Sharon Doviet, Huntsville, Alabama, 536-7337, SharonFamilyLaw.com, child support, custody, divorce.
I love in the novel GetRich.com. Get Rich is the character, and he's a billboard lawyer, and that's how he makes his money. Gets away with it because his last name is Rich. It's good.
Guys who rarely get in the courtroom. He was thrust into a serious situation with his sister, murder. Bob, thanks for coming up. Yep. Rich Blood, well done. Wall Street Journal bestseller, well done, Bob.
Thank you.